What's going on, Gas Money Nation? It's Robert and Austin with the Inside Gas Money podcast, and today we have a very special guest for our latest episode in our Gas Money Mentions series. In this series, we interview business owners, entrepreneurs, and professionals to gather insights about their journey, and more importantly, generate valuable learning opportunities for young adults who are passionate about entrepreneurship. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting Jacky Levi, who is the founder and CEO of Athlogic, a sports analytics company bridging the gap between professional and amateur sports. Athlogic's application was utilized by 1,800 high school football teams in the fall of 2022, recording stats for over 1.3 million plays and providing valuable data to college football recruiters. With a passion for analytics, Jacky first conceived the idea for Athlogic while serving as a statistician for his high school football team, and was later able to transform it into reality during his senior year at Florida State when he participated in the InNOLEvation challenge. A 2020 graduate of Florida State University with a BS in Management Information Systems and a minor in Computer Science, Jacky launched his career as a machine learning and analytics specialist at IBM's Advanced Technology Group as a sales engineer and product manager in New York City. Now, at the helm of Athlogic, Jacky continues to revolutionize the sports analytics industry and empower teams at all levels with data-driven insights. As always, we hope you guys enjoy this episode, get some learning opportunities from it, and if you have a business of your own, always feel free to reach out to us and hop on the podcast yourself. Now, without further ado, let's welcome Jacky with our very first question.
Yeah, thanks for that. So we're actually at a little over 3,500 schools, so it's about a quarter. But Athlogic is a response to the market where the sports analytics market as a whole really has just catered towards the teams at the highest level, like the elite college football teams and professional teams or soccer teams, whatever. And no one's made products that reach that amateur level. It's either too expensive, too hard to use. So that's what Athlogic is. It's company that's trying to bridge the gap between what's available for professional technology and analytics at professional teams and bringing that down to the amateur level. So that app itself right now is available just for high school football teams. There's some middle school teams that use it, but it makes it super easy to record play-by-play stats during games with one or more people using the app to record it. We'll verify all the stats in real time so coaches can get analytics from their phone on the sideline of games, unless you're in Texas, because you can't use technology during sporting events in Texas. And we'll verify they can see analytics, and then from there, we make money in two ways. So we'll license access to the data to college football recruiters. So they use all the stats that we record to identify and recruit kids from there, which is awesome. And then we also make money through more advanced analytics and then automated film analysis. So we're competing against a company called Huddle, which is sports film analysis company based out of Nebraska.
Athlogic's better though, because you guys.
Yeah, we're definitely better objectively. So
awesome. So it sounds like when you were growing up, you had a passion between sports and analytics. I mean, looking at your college resume, I know in high school you played. What sport was it? Rugby. I knew it was something like that. Kind of out there. Yeah. But yeah, so when did you first get that idea to make Athlogic? Was that in high school, early college?
So I first got the idea in high school. So super popular high schooler. Like everyone, I took stats for the football team. And that's where I had that opportunity because I was taking computer science classes, but I also was able to understand at least the tackling aspect of it. So my teacher signed me up to become the analytics guy for the football team just because I was the only one, I guess, in the computer science class that was playing a tackle sport. And she thought that would cross over. And but what's interesting is I'm actually Venezuelan, so I didn't grow up in a household that watched much football. We watched football. So I knew that stuff, but I sat at the game assuming that there'd be something to help me take stats for it, and there wasn't. There was nothing online, at least for me to go through and watch all the stats or figure out how to learn how to take it even. So I had to figure it out on my own, and I would go there with pen and paper, and the stats were very, to say the least, they were very elementary that I was taking, but they were so needed and valuable that like the first week I did it, I would like spend the whole weekend going through and transferring my handwritten like notes over to the computer. I taught myself Excel, and then on Monday I'd like kind of read through the report to the originally it was just the head football coach, but then every week like word got out among the football team, and then like the assistant coaches started coming in, and then eventually it was like we had to move over to like the auditorium because it was like the players would show up and it was all the assistant coaches, and I was just reading it all. So the coaches would use the report and the analytics from there to kind of modify their game plan, and then the players would use that to go turn around and tell it to the college football recruiters that they're talking to, like, hey, I did this many yards or whatever. And then I'd also put it onto Max Preps. So Max Preps is like a reporting site for stats for all sports. It's owned by CBS Sports. And they're interesting because there's no way to like verify the stats on there. So I'd put in like, there's actually two guys where I'd put in like their stats and their second and third string wide receivers. So like their maybe 10-yard game of receiving would turn into like, 200 yards and a couple touchdowns every week because they knew like I couldn't do anything about it, and they thought I was going to help them get recruited to a big D1 school. So that was like another time when I realized it was there's like a big problem right now in recruiting and just in like amateur sports in general, where like they need these stats, and there needs to be a better way to do that. So that was the goal.
When you first like started realizing that, was your original idea like to create some sort of like software for it? Like, did you have mobile app in mind at the time, or was it more like I got to figure out a way to make this faster and more efficient, and then you kind of developed the app idea later on?
It wasn't like a mobile app that I had in mind. The earliest prototype I made was in high school. I took like my AP computer science skills to the test and spent the summer making a command line thing. So like I would just open up the terminal on my computer, and it would just be a bunch of commands that I'd throw in. So like a 5-yard pass play from like 10 to 12 would be 10 PS 12 for 5, and it'd be like 10 pass successful to 12 for 5 yards. And that made lots of sense for me, and I was able to like kind of get pretty fluent with that quickly, but no one else could figure that out because it was just like how my brain works and there's no visual side to it. So in college, like I was the co-founder. I joined like a little bit later, so I wasn't really a true founder, but was considered one for the sports analytics organization at Florida State University. And in that organization, we would work with the teams inside the athletic department to help them in their digital transformation, or that's like the keyword people used. And that's where I got to see like what's being done at the upper levels of sports analytics. So I took those two experiences in high school and college, and eventually I was like, I need something that's easy to use. Because even at the highest level, like the football team, their like way to record traditional stats is also like the ugliest user interface I've seen. So I needed like a good user experience and user interface to make it easy to record it for like the average person. That's Athlogic.
With the numbers too, like, was that just an obsession with the sport, and so you were obsessed with like the full details of it and all the numbers and everything like that? Because it sounds like you wanted to make it easier. You were taking the stats and everything. Like, did you like math? Did you like that whole side of the things, or?
Yeah, I mean,
or did it just come easy to you?
I was never a good student, and I still like I love learning. I just don't like people telling me what to do. But with the like the stats or like sports side, that was like one of the observations I made when I was in the sports analytics club at Florida State, where students would come because they either love sports and they want to see the teams win and they want to get involved, or they'd come because they just love the stats and they just want a way to apply it, and they'll do whatever they need, so they'll pretend to love sports. And I honestly am more on that side of like, I love the stat side of it. I think it's like fascinating, the numbers behind the game. It's like how can you quantify human decisions and like use that for like subjective decision, like to supplement subjective decision making.
And for coaches, I mean, that's going to make their team that much better. If the players also can understand everything that they do on the field or on the court or whatever, they can then make themselves better because they have like the strict details. Yeah. They're not just thinking, okay, I need to throw more touchdowns or whatever. They're like, no, I have to, run this certain route, get a certain amount of yards and then, be able to pass it off so that I can get that touchdown in there. I mean, there's a lot to it, but
yeah, it's like sports, especially like something that's as like physical as American football, it becomes very emotional, and it should be. Like that's what makes the game fun. But those emotions do skew your decisions, and it skews your perspective of the game sometimes. So if you get that perspective of like it's hard to like at least be aware of like how effective your rush game is when you already threw 3 interceptions that game, because you might not even be paying attention to that point. You're just like, my pass game sucks right now. So because of that, you start forgetting those things, and it'll lead to like worse decision makings, and that does affect games. So that's kind of how I think stats should be used as a tool, like to supplement the decisions.
Gotcha. Right. And yeah, so when you started, obviously you had a passion for sports analytics, you had a passion for sports in general, but where did that business passion come from? Did you know about business when you first started? Like, were you like, okay, I'm doing an entrepreneurship venture, or was that more of you saw a problem, you started solving that problem, and then realized you're creating a business through solving that?
I don't know. Like, I think I've always wanted to like impact people's lives more than anything. Like, I know when I was little, I was like, oh, I want to be a CEO, or I want to be fucking president, even though I can't because I'm not born in the country. But I think my like future got shaped back when I was in high school. I interned for my uncle's software company, like his startup, and it was honestly like one of the more important things that's happened in my life, like as far as shaping how it turned out, because I saw that whole startup grind, and I was like really deep into it. It's like when WeWork was nuts. I was there, like I was in Boston for a couple months, and it was my first opportunity to like leave the house, and kind of I was treated like an adult, I felt like. So when I got to like go to the office in the mornings and see everyone working, and I worked on problems that actually I felt like my work was impacting something like real, that was like one of the reasons where one of the moments where I knew like entrepreneurship or like going to higher levels of business was something I wanted to do. So yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's cool. And then when you started, did you always have the name as Athlogic? Like, where'd that come from?
Yeah. So my senior year, I like wanted to re-enter the InNOLEvation challenge. It's like the Florida State University startup competition, and I entered it the year before and I lost. Bullshit. But it was a mistake on their end, as far as I'm concerned. And when I entered the InNOLEvation challenge the second year, I like kind of thought back to my experience in high school with that like command line tool, and I knew like that's what I want to build, is like an app with a front face user interface for that. So I went to, it was over winter break my senior year. I'm from South Florida, so I was in the Nova Southeastern University's library, sitting there for the day, just writing out the business model so I can enter the challenge. And I was like sitting down trying to think of a name, and I like looked at Latin names or Greek ones, like of athlete or sports or whatever. And then after a while, I was like, wait a second, like athletes logic, like Athlogic, and I looked it up. Like there was like nothing out. There's like some company I think that went out of business that was using Athlogic, like their Instagram handle, but the domain was available. It was still a couple $1,000, but not like outrageous. And then I didn't buy that domain for a few years, but I bought like athlogic.io, and then eventually athlogicApp.com, and I entered it with Athlogic. I feel like I have a pretty sick name for the company.
Yeah, and that's fast too that you figured it out, because we've talked to so many people. They'll have a great idea. They'll even have the whole business model, everything made up, but they won't pursue because they just don't resonate with a name. Like it takes forever for some people, and to be able to do that, it sounds like one sitting. I mean, you didn't overthink it. You were overthinking it, and then you were like, just put them together, and it makes total sense. And it's a really easy thing to remember too.
Yeah. No, I don't know. It was like a blessing that I got that name so quick, but I would have pursued it regardless of like a stupid name or not.
Yeah.
Like,
can always change it. I mean, that's the hardest part, obviously, is like, depending on how big the brand gets, then changing it just gets that much harder.
Yeah, but that's, there's this thing I like to call a good problem, and that's a good problem to have. Yeah. So, it's like, just get into it. Like, the name doesn't matter that much. You just grow up a little bit.
So is the InNOLEvation Challenge your first experience actually doing a pitch for Athlogic?
Yeah, that was my first one, and then I got to do it again a few months later as part of like the MIT 100K startup competition. So I made it to the semifinals there, but I don't think I was supposed to even be there because I wasn't a student.
No, that's good entrepreneurship, though. It's about overcoming those obstacles.
That's what it's all about. Is like, like you said, you never wanted anybody to tell you what to do, so you got to break the rules sometimes. That's what they're there for, right?
Not even those weenies at MIT. No, that's honestly like one of the coolest programs too. It's like 100K for any student in that university to go in and get fun. It's no equities given up, and it's like extremely competitive. So even the companies that make it to the final round still will have eyes on like from venture capital firms and all that. So they've built like a tremendous like program out there for entrepreneurship, and I'd like to see that in some other universities like Florida State. Maybe taking that 10K to 100 would be cool, but
for sure.
I mean, and the networking opportunities are insane with that too. Like I know at Florida State, like I've met some cool entrepreneurs here, like some cool professors that have helped out with some stuff. But at somewhere like MIT, like that's where you get the real value is just like the networking opportunities, and that's what we're looking towards as we start doing more like pitch competitions with actual like investors. Is just even if they turn you down, there's so many opportunities to connect with somebody who might point you in the right direction.
Yeah. I mean, that's the name of the game. It's like as far as like fundraising goes, if you're in B2B, obviously like networking is going to be super critical, especially for like bigger ticket items. But the fundraising side, like it's all about networking, and it's like planting seeds with people. So you could have them from before you started the company, and it's like your friends, family, and like people that know how you work and trust you. They're going to be the ones that are most likely to give you that money. But as your like journey into like entrepreneurship or startups continues, like that's when you'd want to like have reached out to like investors earlier on, just said, hey, I'm doing this, I plan to get on like that stage of like maybe they invest in companies that are Series A or later stage seed rounds, and you like just keep them like give them updates every quarter so just so they know who you are. So when the time's right, you reach out to them and you're like, hey, like I'm gonna start raising in a month, let me know if you're interested in getting in. And that's the right way to do it, which, by the way, I did not. So,
I mean, that's the name of the game too. Especially being a young entrepreneur, you learn as you go. That's what we've been doing every single day. And you make mistakes, obviously, but that's also a big thing with mentorship. Obviously, with the network, you can learn from their mistakes and all that's, not have to jump the hurdles that they did, so that you can get around them first. But that's been a huge part of our journey. Obviously, meeting you, it's been freaking huge for what we've done so far and what we've learned. But I guess so you mentioned obviously you're an entrepreneur, you don't want to have people tell you what to do, all that shit. Why college then?
Well, I like say like tell like I will listen to what people tell me what to do, but it's like I think respect is something that should be earned and not given. So I just didn't like it just because, hey, you've been in this gig for like 30 years. Like, it doesn't mean you're any more qualified for this than, someone else would be. And that's just like where I had the issues, and that's why I also had issues with academia. But the whole like reason I went into college is just like I was born in Venezuela, and I mean it's like very like a Latin culture is like going to college and like getting your degree. It's just kind of just going with the motion. But I can't tell you how many times I like was like just like right in front of the area to drop out. I was like, I just want to quit. And I was like, how am I going to tell my parents about that? So I just kept it going. And then I got, like a few credits away, and I was like, all right, fuck it, I'll just finish out. And then I did get a job straight out of college at IBM, and they would have been pretty pissed if I didn't have my degree. So,
Exactly. And with IBM, like, how many years did you do that for? Was it like 3 or 4?
So I interned there my junior year going to senior year, and then I was in Boston there. I lived in an MIT frat house, which is pretty cool. And then I worked there after I graduated for like a year and a half or so. And it was a great opportunity. I got into like the sales part of the company. I think like unless you're gonna do like the entrepreneurship route, or if you ever have plans on doing it, the best job you can get out of college is sales, like sales engineering or sales, because that's like you're almost like your own independent business when you're doing sales. You just work for that company selling their product, but sales is like the most often overlooked skill for anyone looking to go into higher levels, because if you hit the upper echelon of any career, you're going to be doing sales. You just might not realize it. Like managing directors are selling to like people to like invest in their company, or maybe like come to their practice and like work there, and CEOs are doing the same thing. They're selling to shareholders like why you should invest there. So it's like really all about selling if you ever want to be successful, or even day to day. You sell all the time without realizing it. Like if I'm at the bar and I'm trying to like meet some chicks, like you're essentially selling like, hey, this is why you should get to know me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, your personality, your character, you put it all out there, and you obviously try to describe it in the best purchasable way, I guess. If you think about that, You're selling yourself.
Yeah. So when I was at IBM, it was like an awesome opportunity because they put me through like a 6-month training program, and they spent like crazy amounts of money on each person going through it, which I think now they got rid of that whole program. It was called the Summit program at IBM, but that was awesome because I like got to really like develop those skills, and I think it's still valuable to this day, for me at least. So I like use selling all the time, like for fundraising or talking to customers or clients or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it gives you the confidence to take no if you need to, move on from it, or also to not take no for an answer. Like there's different situations. I took a couple sales classes here at Florida State, and like I actually tried switching my major to sales, but was ended up too late in my academic career. But that was like one of my favorite classes because we do like mock elevator pitches and stuff, just trying to like sell right on the spot. And it really teaches you how to deal with counters, learn how to figure out what people's pains are, and then sell to them based on that. Like a lot of people, when they sell things, they try and describe like the best attributes about their product or why people should buy it, instead of actually figuring out why this person needs that product in the first place. And it's like the same thing. Like if you go to a bar, you see some girls, if like you can read their body language and kind of play off of that, how you're going to talk to them, how you're going to approach them. And it's helped me just doing the business like us. Like we started out door knocking, got a ton of no's, but the few yeses that we did get gave us that motivation to keep going forward. And then we realized like it's okay if people give you a no here and then. Like if you keep pushing forward, you're gonna make it through. So that's one of my favorite aspects of the whole sales process. And I totally agree. It's one of the best things that an entrepreneur can do.
Oh yeah.
To kind of learn about that.
No, there's like a lot of like contradictory things that you experience, and I can only speak really for entrepreneurship because that's like my business. But there's like people come into entrepreneurship and they see like no's or failures as like a bad thing, when really it's like the most important thing for any startup. Like, because this is actually what I'm going to be speaking about tomorrow, but entrepreneurship is like an art and a science, in the sense that like the art sense is that you're having a conversation with the market and your customers and users. So you have a hypothesis, which this is the science part. You have a hypothesis, and it's a very focused hypothesis. It's not one that has a lot of variables. You only have one variable, like you do when you're doing a science experiment. And you test out your hypothesis, you listen to what the market responds to it, and then you go back and you pivot. And then pivoting is like where you actually like you're shooting at like a target or like a bullseye. Like when you shoot the first time and like you're off to the left a little bit, like you pivot and you get closer to the center. And that's the same thing with entrepreneurship. Like you're supposed to like kind of shoot out just in that general direction, and over time you'll get in towards that center, and that's your sweet spot. Like one of the biggest mistakes I see people doing is they do too much too early, and that's like overwhelming. So like some people might not even start, or they might quit because it's like they don't know exactly what's going wrong. But if you're just focused on what your like hypothesis is and honing it into like the bullseye, then you'll actually like usually find a lot of success that way. And I think that's really like the biggest reason why startups fail, and in my opinion, like that's how I view it at least.
Yeah, you gotta be adaptable, especially in the rapidly changing tech space we have nowadays. Like when we first started Gas Money, we didn't even have the vision for the app. We were just two high school kids mowing lawns trying to make some extra money, and then we got the vision for the app, made the MVP, had a few changes we needed to make, and then now we're at the point where we've made so many pivots that like we've been that much more focused on our end goal, which is the same goal that we had from the start. We've just managed how we kind of approach it differently. So I guess for Athlogic, have there been any like major pivots that you've made, any lessons you've learned for how to address the market differently?
Yeah, I mean, so many. Like, fortunately, the actual like center concept of it hasn't had to change that much, which is like very strange for most startups. But the revenue, the revenue streams has changed. Like how I make money changed, how I monetize. Like, well, that was the same one, but yeah, like I knew from the beginning, because I experienced the pain myself, like that there needed to be an easier way to do it. So I was building a product for myself, but the pivots really came like with how I plan on selling it, how I plan on marketing it, you get it wrong usually, like, and that's fine, but it's all about like how you respond to that and how you have to keep pushing forward.
What was that beginning like? Learning how, obviously you knew everything about it, the ins and outs, and you knew how you could sell it to yourself because you're building it for yourself.
Yeah.
How did that start when selling it? Did you call high schools? Did you email people? And then, how was that pitch? And then how is it now? Obviously it's a lot better, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to be like a live thing. When I first started the company, I was like, I don't even know, like I was kind of convinced that it would be something where I just email a few people and it'll just like take off like wildfire.
You did the same shit.
Yeah. Like, hey, I have this app, and people are like, fucking yeah, it's sick.
Right, yeah.
I'm gonna tell everyone. And that didn't happen. So I was like kind of like confused. And I was also at IBM too, so like I didn't have that much time. So I was like, I literally just, I think, sent some people a link to it. I didn't even explain what it was. But once I explained it, I got on a call with these people, and it was just like, hey, can you just give me feedback on the product? Because that's all I wanted that year, was like just seeing. I story of how I like had the app out for beta is like kind of outrageous looking back. Earlier that year in 2021, I hired some developers that were mutual friends out in Kosovo, and they don't play American football out there because it's American. It's like no one plays American football outside the country, and it's a very like strange sport to anyone that's not American, and even a lot of Americans. It still is like very confusing. So I essentially asked them to build like an app that a football expert should be making, not some people who are like learning it as programmers. So they quit with 3 weeks left before the season. I was still working my job at IBM, and it was crazy hours. Like I was actually building another like video game app for them with Unity, like the software development or video game engine. And I was like working 80 hours there, like trying to get this all done. And then I was also like waking up at like 5 a.m., working until 9 on the app, like teaching myself to code. And then once the day was over at like 9 or 10, I'd stay up again until like midnight or 1. And then I'll do it again. And then weekends were like all for the app. And then I got it out with 3 weeks left in the season. And at that point, I was like pretty sure there's no way I can spend more time on that app. Like, so I just like emailed those 5 coaches. Well, I first sent them just a link, and then I emailed them. I was like, hey, by the way, this is what the link is about. Asked for their feedback, and then I got lucky, and these guys started emailing, like sending the app out to other people. So we grew from like 5 coaches in Florida to like 180. And I was completely hands off once I sent those 5 emails, because it was the end of the year and I was trying to close my quota and all that for IBM. I was selling, and I also had to build that video game app out when I was at IBM. It was intense, but I think that work ethic proved like that. I mean, I think I've always had a pretty decent work ethic, but I really like put it to like another level like during that period, and that's helped me out tremendously.
Did that come from passion for that? I mean, like the passion for creating, what that whole tool that you, Athlogic obviously, and then just the passion for development and all that stuff, or did you just force yourself to get over, like, quit being a bitch, like keep working hard?
I think it's both, like a little bit of both of those, and then like a fear of failure is like what really motivates me. And I'd say it's it's not like binary where it's like one or the other. It's like, but I think the majority of like the fuel of the fire was like that fear of failure, but it was definitely also like there's light at the end of the tunnel. Like I believe in my mission. I think it's gonna make like the sporting world a better place, and maybe the world itself. That's a little cliche, but I just didn't want to not do it, and I knew I wouldn't forgive myself if I like gave it up. I'm sure I've told you guys this one 100 times or maybe even more, but this framework by Jeff Bezos, the regret minimization framework, is like one of those things where I make a lot of my decisions using it. The idea is like you mentally project yourself to when you're 80 years old or so, looking back at your life, what would you regret? And like you want to minimize that regret. So for me, it's like I would regret not like giving it my all to like actually make this work. And that's how I made my decision to quit. Like would I regret like staying at my job, or like would I regret quitting my job and like, you know, and all that. And that was that's been one of the great things for me. It's like gives you a good perspective.
Yeah, and there's a good quote. It's you'll regret the things you don't do more than the things that you do. So when I was in high school, my whole plan was I didn't grow up like with any business knowledge. None of my family had business. It was all just going to traditional jobs. And I wanted to be an actuarial scientist. So like they work for statistics for businesses. I was going to have like a promising career right out of college, make like $90K, $100K a year, and then like grow my salary from there. So in my head, that was like extremely comfortable, right? That's like most people in America is like, that's perfect for life. Then we started Gas Money, and I'm not like saying there's anything wrong with that. Like people can do whatever they want. But when we started Gas Money and started growing it and started realizing that we had something we could potentially scale, potentially grow, and once we developed that dream for like making it nationwide, I had to make that decision. Like, do I want to continue pursuing actuarial science, focus a little bit of time on Gas Money, and then see if Gas Money succeeds, or do I want to like fully rewire my brain to all Gas Money, pursue this as a startup, pursue this venture, grow it as much as I can, and then that way, when I'm older, if I'm 40 years old, if I didn't go forward with Gas Money, I'd just been working this job my whole life, I knew that I would look back and regret it. So I guess in your shoes, kind of leaving IBM to fully pursue Athlogic, did you have a similar kind of mind process where you knew that it was essential to dedicate all of your time and energy to growing your startup and you were willing to take that risk financially?
Yeah. I was like, if I wanted comfort and ease, I would definitely still be at IBM. And it's not like it was the easiest job either, but like, dude, I was getting paid like so much money, like more money than, you know, I like think my parents had when I was growing up. And like, not to say like I was uncomfortable or anything, like fuck.
Breaking the pen out here.
I was feeling with the pen. Yeah, no, I'm good. So then it's all good. But it like wasn't a tough decision for me to make. Like I was like, there's people who I was talking to like investing in me, and they were someone I actually met at IBM when I was interning, and he ended up like making some crazy money on Bitcoin or something like right before that boom in 2020, or I think he had Dogecoin like super cheap like before it hit a penny, and this guy like he's like, you're not gonna leave. He told me, he's like, you're not gonna leave IBM because you have the golden handcuffs on, and I was like, fuck you, I am. And he was only talking about like investing $25K, which is a lot of money, but not really for startups. And I was like, no, I will. Like I would leave like right now if I knew I had $25K coming in. I'll just figure it out from there. He didn't invest. He'll regret that one day. But I know like it's tough for a lot of people to like leave that life of ease and comfort. But growth happens from like discomfort, and a lot of people, especially these days, are like mental health is important and all that, but I'm not trying to discount that. But I think there's like a balance between trying to like push yourself to like extremes where you're gonna be uncomfortable, and then there's like that you go too far and it's not healthy either. It does the opposite. It's like contradictory. You have to find that balance, because if you're not pushing yourself enough, you're never gonna get anywhere. You'll like just follow the flow, like that's it. You'll get your promotions every few years. You'll get that nice like house you wanted or whatever, and you'll pay your mortgage every time. But like that might be, like you guys are saying, that might be fine for some people. It's just not for me. So when I like had my job, like it kind of upset me. I was like, man, this is so boring. Like, and it's not fulfilling. I'm selling banks or computers to banks. Like, it's boring.
We talk about it a lot too, where with entrepreneurship, it's almost like, it sounds weird to a lot of people, but it's almost nice to not know exactly what your life is going to be like in the next 5, maybe 2 years, maybe 6 months. And with that, because that's the uncomfortability. With the comfortability with having a regular job, a steady job, it's okay, if I'm good and I don't do anything stupid, I'm going to have this job until I retire, and I'll probably do about the same thing. I just think that's the most boring thing, just to think about your whole life already and be like, yeah, okay, I've gotten to this point and this is me making it.
Yeah.
I don't have that idea. I think really when you make it is when, I don't know, it's different for a lot of people, but it's definitely not just that, steady lifestyle for me, or I think any entrepreneurs.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's like, it's hard for me to understand how some people, and I understand that some people are more than happy just to get by in their life, but I just don't get it at all. And it's one of those things where complacency is one of those things that I hate. I hate it when I see people who say they have aspirations to do something, but then once they hit that point of they're comfortable and they're they have food on the table and they're paying their bills, that's all they want. It's you were just telling me you want to be a millionaire by the time you're 30, and you just get your first decent paycheck at this whatever insurance company or something, and then you're you take your foot off the gas, and then it's kind of cruel twist of fate, but it always happens where these people get complacent, and then something happens and they get fired or laid off or something, and they're what the fuck do I do now? And they'll call me I need to find a job or something.
Yeah.
Well, dude,
have you heard the quote by Warren Buffett?
What is it?
I'm going to butcher this, but basically a 9 to 5 is one step away from being broke, because you're just that's your only stream of income for a lot of people. So you're one step away is just getting fired. So,
yeah.
If there's cutbacks, or if like in the tech world in the last few years when they had all of those basically cutbacks of large firing sprees, to be able to account for, there was the boom in 2020, 2021, and then now it's kind of getting back to normal. They had to kill a lot of those jobs, and a lot of people probably thought they were set and comfortable, but now it's where do you go from here?
I mean, every single person is their own business, and I think actually someone explained it to me, or on your birth certificate, the reason why your name is, and this might be just some crazy thing I'm saying, I haven't looked into it at all, I'm just going off what he said, but Jamie, pull it up. So yeah, what he was saying is your name is capitalized, or things only get capitalized on government documents when they're corporate entities, and on your birth certificate they capitalize your name for that reason. So you get your tax ID and you're essentially treated like a corporation to the government, because that's your revenue stream, or that's their revenue stream, is you. And I think that's interpret that however you want, but I think that's also a sign of you should treat yourself like a business, and or an investment portfolio. And if you're really confident in what you're doing, then don't hedge your bets and go all in on it. But the company has no loyalty to you. They'll say that they have loyalty to you because they want you to be loyal to them, like a very healthy couple relationship. But at the end of the day, it's loyalty is only there when the market's good, and once the market's bad, and the biggest expense for every business is their people. So you're the first person that's gone, especially if you're not generating revenue. So stick to sales. But it's even if you're not gonna go that whole startup route, there's other ways to become a quote entrepreneur, and it's investing in companies where they pay dividends, or doing some profit sharing at maybe starting up a restaurant where you're a silent partner and you just give them the money and then you take some profit afterwards, or whatever. You get a real estate portfolio or something. But yeah, I think most people are too naive, maybe intentionally or not, to with their future financial outlooks, and they just do whatever is whatever's like hip. Like maybe they're investing into crypto at that point because it's like they think it's a get rich quick scheme. One thing I always tell people is like there's no such thing as fast money. Like it'll always catch up to you unless like you're like brilliant and have extreme discipline. But there's people who are like look for get rich quick schemes, and then there's a reason why people don't get rich quick. It like doesn't work. So
there's so much of that out there. The courses, the just people trying to play off, just random numbers that they're throwing on a screen. Maybe some of these guys, the whole drop shipping era, and so, I mean, you can definitely do well, but during that time when it was really, a lot of people were getting into it and they were selling the courses and, saying you can do it too, 100K a month, all you have to do is this. It's basically just downplaying all the hard work and everything else that it takes and the sacrifices and the risk that it takes to get to that point. And they're just trying to make it sound, super easy and simple to get a lot of people into it. And I mean, I'm all for a lot of people getting into entrepreneurship. Like we promote it every single day. But you have to know what that takes. You have to know what that contract is like to be able to sign on the dotted line. And a lot of times, I mean, I guess talk about this a little bit. Like, I feel like when you start the company, you have the vision, and like you said, it hasn't changed a whole lot. The actual vision, you've made pivots, to the structure and all that stuff. But with that, like, have you made any like large changes in your life to like get further along? To I don't know. Just I was looking like. We were talking about caffeine before this and all the hard work that you put in and like trying to strive for that vision. Did you ever have to make like any huge changes?
Like to my lifestyle?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, dude. I think I'm always one of those like I don't like people who are lazy. Like I mean it's one of the sins. It's like being sloth. I think that's what it is. And it's one of those things where I don't feel comfortable doing nothing. Like I can't go to vacation and like sit at the beach. Like I feel useless. Like that's why it's like my favorite vacation is going snowboarding because at least I'm doing something. So when I first got started, it was like my whole life was like work, and I had some like good balance like outside of it where because it wasn't even as intense as it was last year, but then last year when I was doing the redevelopment of the current version of the app, that was like a huge lift. And I mean, I don't know exactly like how long, but like a team of 3 people to build the app out would probably take them like 6 months if they're doing like 40 hours a week or normal people hours. And then I did it in like 3 months by myself, and it was nuts. I was working 21 hours a day. I did that for like almost 3 months straight. And I remember I finished it and I was like exhausted. I never really believed in burnout until I actually experienced it. And I remember like it was like such a tough time because I was like, there's days like where I wouldn't even get up from my chair like just to go eat. Like I would just go eat when I get home. I'd fall asleep. I'd wake up in a couple hours and I'd do it again. And I like sat back one day and I was like, man, this isn't really working for me. And that was maybe like December of last year, and my friend like reached out to me and was like, yo, we're gonna go snowboarding, you want to come? And I was like, yeah, sure, love to. And then I was like, all right, well, I'm not gonna go snowboarding if I haven't gone worked out in a couple of months. And I love working out, but I just wasn't doing it for months. So I went back to the gym, and like my rule is like I just go to the gym every day. It's like I don't have to do even a 5-minute, like just show up to the gym every day. And then usually I work out like 99% of the time, but like that, like easy to reach goals, like easier to keep track of.
Just get yourself there.
Yeah. And then like during that time of like 21 hours, like working a day, I wasn't working out. I wasn't, I practice guitar. I play a little bit. Like I wasn't doing that. I was barely seeing friends. Like, and I was like, all right, fuck it. So like slowly I like started putting like more time aside to like do things that like I love outside of work. And I found that again, like contradictions are everywhere. It's like the less I worked, the more productive I was, so the more I worked. And I'm still just as productive as I was like last year doing those 21 hours a day, but I work like, maybe 10 or 12 hours. Well, yeah, maybe 10 or 12 hours a day. but I'll still take days off. Like if the weather and surf's nice, like I'll go take the subway out to Rockaway Beach in Queens and I'll surf for a couple hours, or I'll go to a skate park, or I'll like play guitar, or I'll, you know, whatever. Like, and those, or like even every day going to the gym, like that like little break from work is time like when your brain can process all the information that you're digesting when you're working, and thinking through those things like helps me solve problems a lot more effectively that I wouldn't. It's like when you're in the trenches, you only see what's right in front of you. But if you go back and you get like a bird's eye view, you see things a lot differently. And that's when those like periods of like focus, or like not focus, but like problem solving happens. And a CEO's job is maybe like later down becomes more of it, but a CEO's job like traditionally is like just a person that makes decisions. That's it. I think a CEO should also be a good teacher to their like employees and people under them, but their primary role is like just making decisions. And there's, I don't know who it was, but there's like some very famous CEO somewhere that said like, my job is to make 3 decisions a year, and that's it.
I think I heard, I don't know if it was Jeff Bezos or something like that, but he go in a lot of it. I love him. I mean, obviously there's a lot of different thoughts on that guy, but he talked about intuition and like how gut feeling is like one of the main things that he listens to with any decision, no matter what level of difficulty. But yeah, they manage those very difficult decisions for the company. And like you said too, I think they got to that point. They have all this knowledge. They should also pass that along to their company, their employees, and anybody else they can to keep raising up the world. And I lost my train of thought on that first question, but it actually worked out because you kind of wrapped back into it. But I said, you know, you don't really know what you're signing up for as an entrepreneur. Like it would be so cool if you just had this packet of a contract and it was like you're going to work the 21 hours every single day for 3 months and you're going to have your MVP and then keep going from there. Would you sign it? I mean, that's what I ask myself sometimes. I'm like, damn, this is a lot harder than I thought from the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't understand that. And I think, I don't know, you really just don't know what you're signing up for until you're, like you said, in the trenches, and you just got to keep pushing forward because you have that vision.
Yeah, it's impossible. Like maybe when this is like more for like younger founders, I think that's more relevant. Yeah. Like the older you get, the more. There's a great essay by Paul Graham. He's the founder of Y Combinator, and he put it out in June this year. He's been putting out essays since like the late 90s, like, but this one I think is probably his like best one that he's done. It's called How to Do Great Work, and in that one he talks about the difference between starting a company young versus old, and the advantages and disadvantages of both. And the advantage of starting a company old is that you know your strengths and you know your weaknesses. And when you're young, and this is like another thing that's contradictory, but the advantage for young founders is that they don't know what they don't know. So like pretty much like they're so stupid that they'll get into this and they'll say, I want to do it, without realizing how fucking hard it is. And it's good to be stupid in this case. Like that's our advantage. I'm stupid. Like I'm still figuring out a lot of stuff. But what you were saying also about like gut decisions, I just think that this is also like something that's important with Athlogic too, and like my philosophy, something that a lot of coaches will get nervous about with me. It's like I'm not like I'm actually like stats and data is just like a tool, and some people look at stats and data like an end goal. So like they'll only make their decisions off of like stats and analytics, and I think that's like in some cases maybe it works, but in most cases, especially with the more important ones, I think it can be a huge mistake, because you can find contradictory evidence for anything. Like, and you can also have data to back up whatever point you want on both sides of it. And that's why like it's just a tool to kind of get you like 90% of that decision, but that last 10% is your gut, and like something about the human body where gut decisions are like usually actually pretty right. So yeah, that was like a little bit of a tangent, but I just want to kind of throw that out there.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think one thing about entrepreneurship that I struggled with at first is the fact that you have to make, one, your own decisions, but two, like create your own plan for how you're going to attack things. Because when I was in high school, I was super I don't even know, left brain, right brain. Like I was fucking math focused. Like I would get a test, I would do it perfectly, get like A's in all my classes, and like all of my schedules were set out by my classes. So that was how like I was used to doing things. And I thought, okay, once I graduate high school, I'll go to college, do the same thing, follow these tasks, get everything done, do what I need to do, like a checklist, and then I'll do my job and they'll tell me exactly what to do every day. I know exactly what I need to do. I won't have to really plan much. I'll just be in there and basically be a drone, which at the time I was comfortable with. And then once I got into entrepreneurship, I kind of struggled at first because I realized that there's nobody telling me what to do anymore. And it's fully up to me to, and obviously I had Austin, which helped a lot, but it's fully on us for actually creating the vision for Gas Money. Like we are the ones that are creating Gas Money. Yes, we can ask help from mentors. We can see what people suggest. We can get feedback. But at the end of the day, when I first started Gas Money and like learning about entrepreneurship and getting into it, that was a large transition that I had from going to doing everything that people tell me to do, not really having to plan much, and then fully transitioning to everything is fully responsibility on me. I have to control my schedule. I have to have discipline. And like you said, that was one of the best things I think that I did because it forced me to kind of have that learning mindset where I didn't know anything. And from doing that, I was able to develop this passion about entrepreneurship, realize this is cool. I can make my own schedule. I can do what I want. And most importantly, like that puts the control of what you're going to create in your own hands where you have that ownership factor. And I feel like with a lot of startups, like obviously you included, it's like that ownership, that connection that you have to your business is so powerful that if your business fails, it feels like almost like you're failing more than your business did.
Yeah, I mean, it's your baby. And like there's a lot there that you said that is interesting. I have like a lot of, gripes, I think is a word. A lot of issues with the school system and also apparently like teaching words in English. But I do have a lot of issues there because I think it like really does set up people like American citizens, young American citizens to become drones. It's like they don't teach you how to solve problems. They teach you how to memorize books and facts and recite them for that test, and that's it. And that's great if you want factory workers. I think that's like we're based off the like Hungarian like schooling system that's literally designed for that. That's what our U.S. education system's based on. But in this like constantly evolving landscape with technology and business changes and all this other shit, critical thinking is the most important skill, and it's also the most like the least common skill you see among students or people in general. And that's why a lot of people, like you were saying, like when you're in high school, you had that set schedule that's set for you, and then in college, like you might lose a little bit of that structure, but like it's still there for the most part. And then people really struggle when they leave that, and that's why a lot of people go back into academia. Like honestly, people go back to get their masters more for this reason than anything else, where like they just want that structure again. They freak out when they're like, wait a second, like no, my mom's not going to tell me I can't, I can just do whatever I want today. And especially like corporate America like will give you that structure to some degree, but even then it's like up to you what you do. But like entrepreneurship especially is like one of those things where you need to be disciplined. You need to know how you work best. But that flexibility is like beautiful because like with me, I try to like keep track of like, I do try to like analyze how like productive I feel at certain parts of the day, when things work best for me. Like how do I maximize my productivity in my day to get the most output for my work? So it all comes down to discipline, and like everything's about trade-offs in life, and like having that free time has trade-offs, like pros and cons. But for me, it's like it's been one of the best things ever because it's awesome. Like going to the gym at the middle of the day and no one's there. Or, like I wake up at a disgustingly early time that I don't want to publicly say because it's kind of crazy. But like I do that, and then I'll just bang out work for like 5 hours in the day until people get up. And that's like my like time for like actually getting like deep work done. But yeah, like I think it all kind of stems from that educational system that we have here. And like I advocate for change to that. Like if the U.S. wants to stay top dog, then we have to kind of evolve how we teach our youth or children how to be better.
I think you need to learn from experience. Like, there's not enough of that. There's not enough hands-on, or I guess hands-on is the word to say, even though you're not, it's not all trade work or anything like that, but just situational things, situational learning, and that's where you get the experience. I mean, I'm seeing these social media posts on, I guess X now, and it's like people making fun of these girls that they posted these TikToks. They're like, I just got this job and it sucks. And or they don't even, they're in the job market and they're putting their resumes everywhere, and everybody's like, you have a degree, but where's your experience? Like, a degree is not experience technically. I mean, especially if it's all just passing tests. So I think when it really comes down to it, that when I've been looking at it from a bird's eye view, it needs to change that way, because I guess that might be just a thing I see in myself. Like, that's how I learn, and I feel like that's how a lot of entrepreneurs learn. You either have a failure or you have a certain conversation that you're like, why did I say that? Then you think it through and then you do it better, the next time.
Yeah.
So I think those situational approaches to education, it needs to be implemented a lot more. But it's like, that whole structure, and then you see corporate America, they want that whole structure so that they can, continuously get employees. So then there's a lot of controversy there. Obviously, there's a lot of back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's tough for a lot of people. I personally think the pendulum's like gonna swing a little bit the other way. I don't have too much of a perspective on like how the academia to corporate to like trying things has like gone over the years, but the way I'm starting to see it, it's like things got very like titles or like points, I call it, based, where like if you go to like an Ivy, you get more points, and if you worked at like interned at like a good like investment banking firm or a good tech company, you get more points, and if you were like a executive at somewhere, you get more points, and like that's all it is. Like, and I think now people are starting to realize like how pointless a lot of that stuff was, and it's like, hey, like, what do you actually know? Like, how does that, like, I don't care if you worked at a massive company, like you could work at a startup and still get like way more experience than one of these big companies. So I think the pendulum's going to swing the other way. And just with me, for example, with Athlogic, I have a lot of students record stats for Athlogic for their high school football teams. They're extremely bright, very motivated students, and I think that's like one of the, like, there is like a huge, like, that American spirit of like always wanting to be better and always wanting to succeed is like still very alive and prevalent. I think it's been suppressed to some degree with like social media and like a lot of bureaucracy and all that BS in our education system, the teachers union, but with Athlogic, what I'm doing to like kind of combat that a little bit is our sports analytics club. So with that, students who are recording stats are able to, well, I think I have it just for students right now. It might just make it like fully public-ish, but students who like record stats can go in, and then the day after I'll send them an Excel sheet with the stats, and then I'll have like a 10-minute Zoom call or 15-minute Zoom call where I'll teach them the fundamentals of like a new technical skill. But the purpose of the club isn't to teach those skills specifically, because if I had to do that, it would take me hours. I teach them the skills to solve problems on their own without clear direction. So like they're motivated by like the end goal of helping their team win more games. But what the way they do it is by learning these new skills. Like, hey, if you learn how to use Excel correctly, you can analyze it and you can get this result. So like go out and figure it out. And it's always funny the first week, like I'll teach them like the basics of how the club works, and it's very different from what they're probably used to. So like I'll say, hey, you can go in and use like Google, and you can use ChatGPT, and they freak out because it's like, so like I can, like, that's cheating. I was like, no, it's not. Help your team win. And I've seen these kids go out and do some like amazing stuff, like create the most detailed reports. Like some kids took the weather data that we'll have for the stats that are recorded, and they cross-referenced it with like their pass rate. So how should they structure their defensive strategy to like prepare for the pass or rush when it's like 80 degrees and sunny versus raining or whatever. And like they did actually a lot cooler than that description, but it's all self-taught. Like, none of these kids had programming experience until the club, but they took ownership of what they were doing, and they wanted to see their team win. They went and made something amazing. So as part of like the sports analytics organization, next year what I'm going to be rolling out is a bridge program that's going to be an alternative to college. So kids who are in this, I'm going to take the top students from the country. I'm going to give them a normal salary. I'm going to probably have them move up to New York City for me, like, to be with me for a year, and they're going to work under me. They're going to help to essentially like learn how to, you know, be employees, not be students, and they'll get some extra cheddar in their pockets. They're not going to have to pay for college, and you know, as long as it's the right fit at the end of that year, we'll keep them around for as long as we can. And if not, then they can go to college, and I guarantee that any of our college customers are going to want to hire them up in a second. So that's the goal with the sports analytics. Maybe I'll call it the sports analytics bridge program or something. I'll come up with a better name.
It's about application, though. I see that's the moral of that story is you're learning from application. You're not learning from memorization. And you're not just trying to pass a test. And a perfect example of this, actually, I was taught to memorize stuff. That's how you got to pass a test. And I took the real estate exam. Actually, I would just want to get licensed in Michigan, just see what that's all like. And then obviously we want to integrate gas money with real estate agents and stuff. That's something that we want to get into so that they can have a tool to clean up their property and stuff before they list it. And so I went through. They gave us all these key points. It was like 200 key points. They were like, look at this and you'll be fine. And I had it down. I actually used ChatGPT to make a couple practice tests off the key points, and I was getting 100% on all of them. Took the test, and it was all application. It was situational questions. And I was like, wait, I just memorized what this means. I didn't memorize and try to apply it to a certain situation. So the difference with what you're doing, it's you're forcing them to apply themselves and actually do it in a real atmosphere. Whereas just a standardized test, you're not really applying anything. You're just applying your memorization skills.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, also like with academia, it's always like a few years late. Like I forgot like the names of the video editing softwares. Like it's Final Cut and then something else. Is Final Cut Apple?
I think so.
Well, yeah, whatever Apple's like, not their iMovie, but their like Premiere, whatever it's called. I know like a lot of schools teach students how to use that, but really what the industry uses is like Adobe's video editing software. So kids will graduate with 3 years of like working with this software, and they don't know how to use the one that everyone's using because the industry like evolved since then. So that's one of the big issues. And yeah, like it's I like have heard that like some people learn differently and all that, but I don't understand how like you can like you need to apply something to like actually know it. And I have a minor in computer science, and like I did management information systems, so I have some technical background, but to say that I was anywhere near being like a full stack developer is like outrageous. Like I am fully, like with the exception of my one like computer science programming class I took like some non-programming like cybersecurity class and stuff, but I taught myself how to code, and I can code better than a lot of computer science kids I know that are like a year or two out of school, because I applied it. Like I developed an app from designing it to like designing like the actual UI, designing the systems architecture, doing the front end, doing the back end, deploying it to the cloud, like managing it, like going into the database, figuring that all out. Like, and I know it better than most people who have been like studying for it for 4 years at great colleges. And it's I think that's really to show like the value of just learning. And what's like really like outrageous is our emphasis even on schooling in general, because like in human history there's never been more access to information in history. Like you have access to like more information than like kings used to have in the 1900s, and like you just have that at your fingertips in seconds because the internet's so fast. But the thing is, most people don't know how to use the internet like correctly, and they don't know how to teach themselves things without being told exactly what to do. Like they're just drones. And like that's one of those skills that like really needs to be taught. But once the general population, or at least like a portion of like the U.S. understands how to use the internet correctly to solve things, and they realize that things aren't as hard to do as they think it is, the U.S. is going to be like on another level, or maybe on another planet, literally. So.
Yeah, and I guess going off that point, kind of pivoting a little bit, I know Austin mentioned ChatGPT. I know you've used AI a lot before. You actually recommended that we start using it more for business. I feel like a lot of people, there's like a spectrum, and this is my roommate Ethan. He started a AI club here at FSU, and this is what he talked about in his meeting is there's basically a spectrum, like a hype spectrum for AI. So on one side, you've got everybody's trying to get rich quick with it. There's schemes like use AI to run TikTok videos or whatever, and you're going to get rich quick from it. Then on the other end is people are worried that it's going to take everybody's jobs. Like if you're an accountant, if you're doing tax preparation, like AI is going to be able to do that in a few years. Like you're going to be out of a job. And then in the middle, which is the more reasonable part, is AI is a great tool to use for productivity, for ideation, and for feedback. And like you mentioned, it has access to so much data just over time that it's insane how much it sounds like a human when you're talking with it, and the amount of output it can create in seconds or less. So I guess from your perspective, two questions. One, have you used AI, actually like integrated it with Athlogic at all? And two, how do you kind of view AI in general, and how do you think society should learn to interact and use it?
Yeah, I guess like that first point is pretty easy. Like the data that we have is like our oil. It's data's the oil of today, and that's where I think Athlogic's going to be that's where Athlogic's extremely valuable. So next year, what I'm going to start doing is the video stuff is like being used to train a computer vision model. Eventually I'll be able to have like not have to have humans like actually manually inputting stats. They'll be automatically done through film. So that's one application of it, but I'll also have like an AI coach for teams that are using Athlogic Premium Analytics. So they'll be able to use the stats to kind of say, hey, like, what should we do here? And it'll know exactly where you are, the situation, the weather, and all that, and it'll give you some recommendations, kind of like Madden. But as far as like that whole future with AI stuff, there's like those two boats, or like the two different parties, and you have one group of people that are saying like, let's like suspend or pause all development on AI, and then you have the other people that are like no, let's not do that at all. And well, actually, it seems like the majority are like, let's pause it, which is dangerous, because even if the U.S. itself isn't like a free market, the world itself operates like a free market, like a truly free market. It's actually anarchy, like, because there's no rules. I mean, there's like pseudo rules with like the national laws or whatever, like UN. It's really just optional for countries, especially the U.S. And but the reality is, like, if it's not going to be us developing, it's going to be someone else, and it's going to be someone else that might not have the same best interests as us. I think one of the big mistakes that the West makes is like we assume everyone has like things like us and maybe has like good intentions, and that's not true. Like, you're starting to see that a lot right now around the world play out, where some people like they celebrate death and they think that's a good thing. But with AI, I personally think it's a little bit of both, kind of, or maybe it's like the other third option. But it's not like a zero-sum game where it's one or the other. I think it's all about just market awareness. So, and the market will kind of control itself. Like, I don't think artificial like stoppers should be put in place to like inhibit growth. I think it just be something about like getting the word out there, saying, hey, we need to be careful about this stuff and how we approach it. And that's like the best thing we can do. It's not the best thing possible, but like there's no realistic solution that I see the government coming in and doing something that's going to be good. And I know Biden put something out there recently about like AI stuff. I think it's a huge infringement on our First Amendment right. I think I just end up seeing it becoming something like the FCC, or the whatever it is for like governing TV and like what you say over radio. Like, that's what I think is going to end up happening, is like another government bureaucracy, like as if we need more to govern AI development. And like, all that red tape does is just inhibit and like stop innovation and growth. Like, so yeah, it's all about like awareness, and just having the market be aware and stopping government from getting involved when they're not needed.
Would you kind of compare, because you said at the beginning, if we're not going to do it, somebody else is. Would you kind of compare it? I mean, this is a big comparison.
Nuclear?
Yeah, the atom bomb. I mean, we obviously got that out, and unfortunately we used it very quickly. Actually, I just heard on a Joe Rogan podcast, in less than 50 years after we invented the airplane, we dropped an atom bomb. Less than 50 years after that, which is crazy. I mean, how just time, like, that's not a very long time in innovation. But I think the comparison's definitely there.
Yeah, like it's definitely there. Technology, like for a long time, was very stagnant, like growth. But then as more technology comes out, the more new technologies come in, and we're living in a time right now where things are going to be evolving rapidly because it's only getting easier. Like even developing stuff, like software development languages are getting more and more high level, like closer to English. It's like getting further away from binary, closer to English. It's getting remaining just as fast for processing, and like even technologies to interact with are getting easier and easier. And I don't think it makes sense to like stop that growth, but I like don't know how dangerous like AI is going to be, but it's like inevitable, and I'd rather be the ones kind of pushing the charge than having like some other countries like China or Iran coming in and then doing something with like worse intentions of like maybe shutting down the grid system like for power in the country or something. But yeah, that's like a race to, well, it used to, the way I grew up learning that name was called Super AI, but now it's like AGI, yeah. Yeah, but it's like all it is like AI that can address problems on its own and fix it, which like it's like bugs on its own. So what that means really is like it's like, oh, I can't solve this problem yet. Like maybe it wants to figure out the cure for cancer. So it's like we're just not technically like at that level with the code it has right now. So it'll address that, fix it, and then figure out the problem to cancer, which is crazy.
Like consciousness almost, right?
Yeah, artificial consciousness. And then you get into that whole debate about like what do you define as consciousness and all that. So I think it's like the way that we're going right now with like even Musk's Neuralink, which I have like very mixed feelings about because it's kind of scary and very, very Black Mirror-esque. We're going to start to see a blend between like natural biology and then artificial biology, and like I would like to imagine it's gonna supplement lives, but I also think that phones are like the first step towards that like merging of the two, and it's had a lot of dangerous repercussions on our society. Like people are stopping to think for themselves, like, and then they're more easily like manipulated. So I think it comes down to the individual person on like what they set their boundaries as. Like I'm trying to figure out like the balance between my phones and all that. So I honestly want to get rid of it and just go for like a flip phone again, which would be pretty funny as like a tech CEO. Yeah. But it just does become such a big part of your life, and it's like it's an appendix pretty much.
Yeah, it's crazy too, because like this is really the first time in recent history, like if you're talking a century or earlier, phones came out obviously like early 2000s, like actual like smartphones and stuff. Like, we're still super early on the curve, and we really haven't learned much about them. Like obviously there's been a lot learned, a lot of innovation, but I'm very curious just to see how the next like 50 years or like throughout the rest of our lifetimes go in terms of technology, in terms of AI and everything in that sense. And I imagine, like Austin and I were talking about this the other day, you've got like, for example, like if you're drinking a beer, most of those companies that are large, like Budweiser, Anheuser-Busch, like all those companies were founded a long time ago, like over 100 years ago. And now with tech companies, like Amazon, for example, they've only been in business like 30-ish years.
So early 90s.
Yeah, I think it was early 90s. So the point I'm trying to make is since technology is still so new, it's going to be very interesting to see which companies carry on that century-long legacy, which companies burn and fail, and what the kind of business sphere in general turns into as a result of that.
Well, it's hard to like predict the future. I will say like there's on the tech side, there's like a pretty obvious trend of our access to information, and I think that's going to go through an evolution. And what I mean by that is like how close we are to answers to questions, which has an inverse correlation between our critical thinking skills. And I'll explain that too. If you think about like back when computers first came out in like the mid 1900s, you might have like originally had to go to like your like the biggest university in like the country to go to a computer, and then you eventually had to go to like your local library to get a computer, and then there's one person on your street that might have had one, and then it's like now it's in your house, the computer, like, but you have one and that's it. And then laptops became a thing, so you could take it with you when you're going, and then everyone has a laptop, and then at some point or everyone has a laptop or a computer, and at some point everyone has a phone, and then like a smartphone that they can access the internet from, and like every single time you're getting like the time it takes for you to get to those information, it gets smaller and smaller, so you don't have to rely as much on like your own cognition, like reasoning skills, which is I think bad. People need to focus on that. But now it's like the phone is like I was saying, like another appendix, and like when you like even me, like when I don't know where my phone is, I'll like fucking be like, where the fuck is it? Like I'll like freak out, and it like kind of takes priority over everything else, which is scary. And I'm conscious of it. I know a lot of people are aware of that, but I think now the next step that if I had to predict would be something with like mixed reality, which is like kind of like virtual reality. Like virtual reality is like you're completely like blinded to the world around you and you just are immersed in it. Then there's augmented reality where it's like kind of like outside, but mixed reality is like the machine will know that there's like a table here and it'll put like a keyboard on there and it'll kind of blend in with your surroundings, and it might be a little clunky at first, like with Apple's glasses.
That's what I was gonna say.
But yeah.
Compared to Meta Quest,
Yeah. Which by the way, Google Glasses tried that a few years ago and it failed, but what people don't know is that Google never really killed Google Glasses. They just put it to commercial use. What I think is super interesting, and that's a good case study on like the market adoption towards products, like the technology was there, but the market wasn't willing for that yet to like come around. And then I think around that time, Snapchat became really popular because everyone's like pushing back, like I need privacy, like people can be filming me at any time. And now like Snapchat's around and people can be filming you anytime. Like it's weird. Like these are all like surveillance cameras essentially, and it keeps people like always a little bit like people don't open up, I think, and like they always have to put on some facade unless like they're away from their own phones, which is like insane, or their Alexa, like, and I think that gap between like our access to information, which right now is just our like thumbs, is going to get even smaller once we have augmented reality or mixed reality, and it's going to maybe just be some clunky glasses at first, and no one's really going to want to use that to replace their phones. But once that technology gets lightweight enough, and it might not even be glasses, it might be like something on your palm, or that's like where I think it's going to go, and then Neuralink's going to be that next thing. But as far as like longevity or like of companies, and I think success, like we're hitting this phase where we're starting to see like exponential change in technology, and like therefore in companies as well. So with that coming out, the like we're starting to see the like a lot of the more like older companies like kind of falling out of grace, which is normal. There's a good book there called The Innovator's Dilemma, and they talk about that specifically. I need to remind someone outside about that. But the Innovator's Dilemma talks about like why massive companies fail, like why did Sears fall out of grace from the public eye, and I think like the best response possible is like for that rapid evolution is to avoid bureaucracy at all cases and to stay lean. So it's what I think it's going to be is like almost starting child companies that will eventually replace the parent company, but like keeping like a low head count while still remaining while still leveraging these new technologies to stay ahead of the curve. Because if you're a big company, you can't, it's a very painful process to adjust to like these AI, like ChatGPT, and using that and integrating that into your workforce as effectively as possible. But for a company at our size right now, like we each have like no employees, but we still have like a pretty large market share, or at least like enough traction where we're kind of starting to hit our stride. We're best positioned actually to respond to like these new technologies coming out. So, and that's because we're small, and like that's because like we can just tell our employees like, hey, this is how you use it, and if you need like we can train you or whatever, and you can start using it super quick and kind of pivoting on a dime. But yeah, that like the length of a company's relevance is only going to be around as long as they're not bureaucratic and as long as they're able to pivot quickly. So
yeah, definitely. And it's interesting too, like I guess kind of pivoting off that a little bit. I know I talked about the AI spectrum earlier. I think like entrepreneurship in general also has a spectrum that's kind of grown in recent years, especially where on one end it's focused on money, usually quick money just for yourself, like maybe doing drop shipping or doing wholesaling or something like that, which I guess is kind of entrepreneurship, depends how you look at it. But on the other spectrum, which I think where we lie more closer to, is the longevity aspect of it, where we're trying to create lasting businesses that we can either exit from later on or continue growing, create child companies with those, and more importantly, just positively impact people in general. Like we started our business because we were high school kids who were busy with school and didn't have time to get a normal part-time job. So we ended up creating a lawn care business to earn money on our own. And then we extended that out with gas money with our platform to make that accessible for millions of young adults across the United States. And it's the same thing with you. You saw a gap in statistical analysis for football teams. I know you were on the rugby team, so similar concept, but it's about, I think, that spectrum on entrepreneurship. I really like that startup side of it, where it's looking for longevity, looking to solve problems not only for yourself but also for a greater population. And at that point, at least in Austin I's heads, I'm sure you would agree, it comes down to, yes, there's money involved. Yes, that's like the ultimate goal of starting a business, but more importantly, creating that legacy where when you die, people are still going to remember your business. They're still going to benefit from it. And I think that's the best way to look at kind of startups, entrepreneurship in general, because if you don't have that greater vision of your business outlasting you and continuing to grow without you there, then what's the point in starting it?
Yeah, I mean, the founder is like the soul of a company, and you see that a lot where once like the founder dies or like steps away from a business, they kind of slowly start dying at that point. And like companies like IBM are impressive because they've still remained some relevance, like somehow by leveraging their size to their advantage. But I think like the really cool thing about like startups specifically and like creating innovative technologies is like that you keep like a lasting impact on like the world. So there's like the political world and then the like technology world they run in parallel, but they're not together. And like countries and governments for the countries are almost like their own businesses, and inside, like outside of that, you have the businesses that countries are all built on the predecessors of other countries, and that story of like a revolutionary war for the US or some like overthrowing your government or whatever it is, and then they innovate by like introducing new ways of government. Like the Constitution was one of like the best and most important documents ever written in history, or at least recent history. And I think it's like a shining light in giving power to the people and kind of removing what they did a great job of is knowing that they need to limit the size of the government, and that's all the Constitution's based on, like giving the power back to the people, which is super radical because throughout all of human history, the power was always given to the government itself, and that inhibits growth and innovation. I think that's part of the reason why we kind of like I think it was going to happen eventually, but it might not have unfolded if the U.S. wasn't there on the world stage. But with companies, what's cool is like, or like introducing innovative products is what's cool is like you're building on top of what other people have built before you, and then you're adding your story or like your impact to that same story, and it's always going to continue to evolve. Where in the future, I hope someone comes and takes my technology and builds something cooler on top of it. And yeah, I think that's where the benefit really comes from running a startup. And I know, like you said, that there's like drop shipping and stuff. This is one of the things I'm going to be talking about in the speech is like the difference between small businesses and startups. So there's a great essay by Tim Urban. It's called The Cook and the Chef, Elon Musk's Secret Sauce. And it analyzes like how Elon Musk thinks. And in that essay, I think it does a good job, like a good analogy of small businesses and startups. It does a good analogy of small businesses and startups. That was tough to get out there. Bless you.
Sorry.
So when he refers to a chef, he's referring to like a chef that invents recipes or creates recipes. And then a cook is anyone that follows a recipe. So the same thing, like small businesses follows like that same playbook. And then a startup is one that creates new playbooks. Y Combinator defines, which is like the biggest startup accelerator. I think like Airbnb, Uber, Reddit, GitHub, like what is it? There's like a few other.
No, DoorDash was on it.
DoorDash was on it. Can't remember the name. Whatever, it doesn't matter. So all those companies were like born from Y Combinator, and they define startups as smaller companies that are designed to grow and scale fast, usually using technology. And I don't think that's not like the exact definition, but it's very close. I don't think that's entirely complete. What I think a small business is, or a startup is all of that, plus they create radically new products. And like Spotify like wasn't an incremental like marginal improvement over iTunes. It was a radically new way to listen to music that changed the entire industry of music. And Snapchat wasn't a new way to communicate, like a messaging system. It was a radically new way to listen to or to message with people, and that also changed like how we communicate among each other. So that's what a startup is, like a true startup is to me. And I think that's why we need more young startup founders out there. It's because young startup founders are willing and like able to take on more risk, and that's why they're able to do those radical changes, because realistically they're more likely to fail, but when they hit it big and they're able to execute on their vision, they're able to like really change the world. And the startup, or when I say startup founders, the founding fathers, when they signed the Declaration of Independence, they were all in their 20s, which is outrageous. Like, yeah, startup founders, but for that side of the world, like that other parallel. Like in the Cook and the Chef, what they do is they say it's like there's a spectrum where you have cooks on one end and chefs on the other, and the vast majority of that spectrum is for cooks. So on one end you have cooks that are like follow recipes to a T, like everything is done exactly how it said. And then the further along the spectrum you get, like maybe it's experience, maybe it's just like confidence in there, or like just being wild. They like modify the recipes a little bit, like I don't know, like they'll put peanut butter on like a burger or something. And then on like the very end of the other end of the spectrum, you have chefs, and like that's a small percentage of it. And chefs are people that like create new recipes. Like it could be good food, it could be bad food, but at the end of the day, it's like a new recipe that comes from their own intuition and their own reasoning. And they're the ones that, you know, someone at one point sat down with dough, or like wheat or flour, whatever, water, tomatoes and cheese, and they invented the pizza. Like someone had to do that. And and then from there, like people started building on top of it and creating new types of pizza. Like they thankfully someone put pineapple and so, or what was it?
Pineapple ham.
Yeah. That's great. So that's like the same thing with startups. Like startups are the ones that go in and they see like a new raw ingredient and then they create a new type of company out there. And that's I think what's important in this country, and I think that's what we're missing. So we need more young people involved in startups.
Yeah, and I was listening to Sam Altman was just recently on Joe Rogan, and they were talking about I guess, I don't know, have you heard him speak? And yeah. I thought he was young. I mean, he just didn't age much, I guess. He looks like he's in his 20s, but he talks about this whole career that he was an investor in Silicon Valley and all that stuff before he got into, the different startups that he got into, and then obviously OpenAI. But he was talking about he's still obviously directly like in that, and he sees what's going on today, and he was seeing a drastic drop of young founders, especially tech founders. And it makes me wonder, we were talking about how, right now you have the easiest access to as much information as possible, right at your fingertips. Is that an intimidating factor now, where it almost like you have so much access to knowledge, but then it makes it even harder to start, and that's why maybe young people are falling short and not starting in the tech, I guess, in the tech space, and even just being young entrepreneurs in general?
Yeah, it's overwhelming to a lot of people, and then young startup or aspiring young startup founders usually don't even get started with it because they have a fear of failure, and they have also like that, like maybe just like anxiety from all the different options that they can do, and like they always want to jump in to do too much at once, or they think that they do, and they're both like kind of one of the drawbacks of like this digital era that we live in, where you see all these other companies doing things, and like there's so many resources out there where like they just like get overwhelmed. But the solution for that's pretty straightforward. It's like use the technology to your advantage, like, but remain focused and just stick to like that narrow-minded vision to test out your hypothesis. That's all a startup really is. Like starting a startup is like you have a hypothesis, and then you just get an independent variable, like, remain focused on like that hypothesis and test it out. So Snapchat, when it first came out, was cool because Snapchat did it came out when I was like in middle school, I think. And what they did is their hypothesis was, I think people want to message through photos that disappear. And I think that was like in response to social media, where it's like people really spend like a lot of time trying to put the best photo out of themselves, like not just like some goofy photo of them sitting down like at the desk doing homework or something. And it worked really well. So they put out just an app, like their app originally was like just a camera where you took a photo and you sent it to people, and that was it. There was nothing else. There was no maps. There was no points. There was no or snap score. Or like there's no like emoji or what is it, like your little cartoon figure that you get. It was just that. And they put it out. They got a good response from the market, and then they invested more into the product and adding in those features that they wanted. And that's like a good model for young startup founders to do. It's like just figure out what your hypothesis is and test that out, and that's it. Like the more variables you introduce, like the more the further away from the right answer you'll get. So that's what I think a lot of people really need when they're like the direction that a lot of people need to follow when they're starting a company.
Definitely. Yeah, and I guess when you were talking about Snapchat, like Be Real came to my mind. Did you ever use that at all? It was like you take a picture at one time during the day, everybody gets a notification at the same time, and it's like you take a picture of what you're doing in that moment.
I haven't used it, but I've like been involved in the Be Reals.
No, it's like it's interesting to me because they like popped off for like a couple months, like every single person. Like I was in class and like everybody just pull out their phones, take a selfie. Like it was the weirdest shit ever. But like now you don't see anybody using it, so it makes you wonder if like where they went wrong with that, because if it was limited features, like if they would have launched maybe a decade earlier, it's interesting to see like if they would have been more successful and how that would have transformed just kind of how people interact. Like I feel like after Snapchat came Instagram experimenting with like short form, and then TikTok came out with Reels, and that really like transformed the whole entire space. Like even Snapchat now has Reels on there. like that you can look through. And like I think Netflix is doing short form content. Amazon even has a section where you can like scroll through influencer videos to like shop based on ideas that are in the videos. So like I feel like short form is becoming a lot more popular nowadays, and it's interesting because like I know personally like it's fucked my attention span. Like I watched a lot of TikTok in high school, and it's very interesting to me to see like what's going to come next after that in terms of social media. Like a lot of platforms right now are going to that short form, but like what's the next step after that? Is it like you mentioned earlier, the mixed reality where everybody has these goggles on or walking around, and it's like they have like, you know, like the Subway Surfer thing that people put on videos to like keep you engaged. Like somebody will be walking around with that in the side of their vision. Like I don't know, it's very interesting, and I feel like it's been both a service and a disservice, because it's a service in that TikTok's one of the largest search platforms now for things, and you can find a short video to learn about pretty much any topic in the world you want to learn about. But at the same time, people have gotten so used to this like instant gratification with dopamine that nobody's able to focus anymore.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting how it's like impacting people psychologically.
Yeah, people are like overstimulated these days, and that like this whole short form thing is like in response to like our shorter attention spans, because there's so much information and things out there. I also think like the whole medium of podcasts like this, where people listen to long form, is like good, because it's actually like having like listening to full thought of people, like not just like a tweet where like you just hear like the like just whatever's gonna get your click and that's it, like that's all they want. The podcast actually gives people a chance to like hear thoughts fully thought out, like, and as far as like world like news goes out, or really anything, like even like domestically like news, every single point of contention in this US, like in the US, has nuance to it, and you can skew like stories to push your agenda. That's what I was saying, like data, like you can find data to back up anything, and you can kind of twist a story to kind of push out whatever agenda that you have. And I think that's where things get dangerous, and that's where a lot of the real misinformation happens. And that's why a lot of people don't like the podcast form, and like they'll attack people like Joe Rogan, because when you hear a lot of the nuance behind some of the more like, or the less socially acceptable like sides of things, like people see like, hey, that's actually makes sense. Why was I told something else? And it's because like these stories are a lot easier to like kind of push out through like little fake stories. So there's like a certain population of the US that only clicks on like the stories, and that's about it. Like, you know, fact checkers is a great example, where a lot of these fact checks are like, it'll say like fact check like false, and people are like, oh look, like this is false, and that's all that they'll read, like, because it just doesn't go with the narrative of like what's being pushed out right now. And if you drill it, like if you actually read that, it's like, I don't know, maybe it's like going back to that Trump era, like Tim Pool, he has like a great he had like a great description of that stuff too. He's like, if Trump, like they put out like a story of like Trump does a backflip while or like holding a like a chocolate ice cream cone, and they'll say like fact check false, and then people really just stop that and like, look, you see, Trump didn't do that. But if you read it, it's like, well, Trump did do a backflip and he was holding an ice cream cone, but it was vanilla sprinkles. And people, like, that's how they'll do it, and it manipulates a lot of people because they know people aren't going to read to the last paragraph. So yeah, that can be manipulated and used to like change people's perspective falsely. And yeah, people just have to be conscious about that.
It's headlines to a whole new level. It's, you know, headlines they can definitely be dangerous too, because, you know, there's, like you were talking about the news, and I guess like the New York Times and all that stuff, you know, they're geniuses in getting you to either, you know, just see something and not even click into it and already believe it just by, you know, seeing a short headline. And that's, I think, with all the short form content and the attention span, it's, I don't know, it's changing the world for sure, and it's the awareness that has to come into play. If you're not aware and you're just naive to it, sometimes by choice because you just don't care, it's like because everybody else is, you know, doing it and watching TikToks and all that stuff, But I think the people that are actually aware are going to be the ones that innovate on top of that, and hopefully for the better, actually provide real value. And I'm so glad that podcasts are still, they were booming, obviously, and they still are, obviously. But it comes down to a certain type of person to consume long-form content, which is interesting, too, because YouTube is still, on top of the game with a lot of long-form content, but they've also integrated the shorts. So I catch myself sometimes, I'm like, I want to watch this YouTube video, but here's a clip of like the most interesting parts, and I'll just do that, but I don't get that whole story.
Yeah. I mean, it does like change people's perspective and all that. So
yeah, and I guess like kind of moving back to business, and then we can start wrapping it up. Like most of these platforms, like we just mentioned, YouTube, Snapchat, Netflix, Amazon, they're all moving towards that short form, which probably wasn't included at all in their original plan. And I guess relating that to business, and specifically our businesses, I know you mentioned you're doing that sports analytics club. You're teaching people about how to analyze stats, how to build things from it, how to work on their own without being told a certain set of instructions. And with Gas Money, we're eventually trying to create like, our idea for it right now is like Gas Money University, but we can kind of play around with that. But basically just educating young adults on how to become an entrepreneur, how to navigate the startup space, how to create products, how to do your thing that you want to do on your own without having direction from people, just learning how to be entrepreneurs in general. And I guess moving forward in the business sphere, do you see companies like us that are startups that are trying to stand out from competitors, add extra value as almost being a necessity to include those extra value options where you're educating people, you're providing them with more value than just a way to record statistics, or for us, just a way to earn money? By going that extra step and integrating the learning aspect of it and providing that value to people, do you think that's what's going to make startups in this era stand out from others?
Kind of. Like, I think the content that you put out is something that's going to help, like, on the SEO side. I also think it does help build a brand of like trust as long as you're putting out valuable information and content. But at the end of the day, it's like hard to give a one size fits all answer to that, because it might work for your brand, it might not. It's all about just putting stuff out to the market and seeing how they respond. If it's Jeff Bezos has like another great like way of Jeff Bezos actually has a lot of great like managerial things that he's done with Amazon. One of them is he's like, I don't know if it was like him who said it exactly, but if he finds like an idea that's working, he'll like just test it out, like, and only invest in it a little bit. But once it works, he'll throw gasoline on the fire and keep that going. So that's pretty much like what I think the goal should be for any company. It's like do a lot of things to test out, like hypotheses. I don't know the plural. Yeah, hypothesize. Like, do like the bare minimum to test that out, and then if it works, like invest more into it and like throw gasoline on the fire and like see where it takes you. But the biggest mistake like of Be Real, for example, is they might have not been doing that, and because of that, like they weren't able to keep up with the trends and like kind of capitalize it. Be Real is also bad with their go-to-market because it kind of didn't allow for growth. It wasn't exactly shareable. Like you'd have to go into other platforms to share things, and like that was kind of tough to like figure out. But that wasn't my business, so not my problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I guess just kind of wrapping it up too, like we always ask this question at the end of our podcast. Most of our listeners are 16 to 24-year-olds. Obviously, we're geared towards entrepreneurship. So we talked a lot about startups today. Obviously, we're both working on our startups right now. If you had one piece of advice you could narrow down to give to young startup owners or people that are looking to create a startup, what would that be?
Oh, just do it. Yeah, that's it. Like, it's there's always a reason not to do it, and it might not feel sexy, but like entrepreneurship, when it's done correctly, I don't think is a sexy thing. It's like very ugly, and it's like it's hard, long hours. Like you sacrifice a lot, but you do it for like the long term. So don't get caught up in trying to like look cool. It's a lot cooler to like just do it. And even if people aren't public about it, they always respect people who take those risks. And you know, we need more people who are willing to take risks and work hard to like achieve their goals.
Definitely, especially at a young age. I mean, we don't have families to take care of right now.
Yeah.
It's the best time to do it. So
Yeah.
definitely great advice. And lastly, where can people find you? Like LinkedIn, obviously, Athlogic.com. They're trying to like connect with you and stuff. Go ahead and put some plugs down.
Yeah, I mean, if you know any high school football teams for next year, then please put me in contact with them. You can reach out to like Jacky, Jacky, at Athlogic.com. And then you can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Jacky Levi, Jacky Levi. And then, yeah, like Instagram, we have an Instagram Athlogic team or something. And yeah, just, keep in touch.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on today. And like we always say at the end of our podcast,
Go get that gas money.